You're 90 days away from the launch of your new game, but you've been putting marketing on the back burner. Don't worry, it happens more than you think. You're looking at your Steam stats and thinking to yourself, man, I need to get some wishlists, but I just don't know what to do next. Well, don't worry, friend. We got you. On today's episode, I am joined by Devin Dixon, and we're diving into the 90-day last-minute marketing plan. Devin is the founder of Glitch, an all-in-one game marketing platform designed to grow wishlists and increase sales. On today's episode, we'll be talking how to build a lightweight marketing plan.
One, it should be a multi-pronged approach where you don't just use one marketing channel, you have to use multiple.
Creating engaging content and utilizing tools like a social media scheduler to help you out.
All content is fair game. Everything that you can get your hands on about your game or adjacent to your game is fair play.
How to evaluate social media campaigns so that you can double down on what's actually working.
One post could go like semi-viral, and the other post could fall completely flat. So you need to do this like multiple times for an extended period to understand on average what's working and then what's not working.
And how to create a post-launch marketing strategy so that you can keep building even after release.
You don't stop marketing, you keep marketing. You keep trying to do things like...
So let's get that game from wishlist graveyard to Steam's up and coming. Welcome to Freaking Cool Indies. What led you to Glitch? I was trying to, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think some of the other companies that you were doing weren't super game related. So kind of what brought you into this space and maybe what brought you into creating this organization?
Roblox.
Cool.
So what happened was, as part of an accelerator called Visual Hands before, and when I got out, I did a little litmus test of building c communities for games. I felt like Discord wasn't a best fit for game because, they talk about, "Oh, gotta get players coming on Discord," but when I ask about, like, "How's your engagement on Discord?" It's like, people can't really tell me. It's just like, "Yeah, we got a Discord, and I can't tell you if every post time we go out." So I made this kind of platform that was like a mixture of live video and, UGC, kind of like, almost a Reddit, but specifically designed for games so they can fully monetize and own it. And Roblox saw what I did, and they wanted to sort of acqui-hire me into the company at the time to build out some of the stuff that they were working on. So that was my first, that first got me started down this path.
Very cool. And just haven't looked back since.
Nope. Yeah, yeah, gaming is definitely a different kind of industry, once compared to other stuff I've been in before, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I could imagine even just coming from tech or that whole side of things, and I just gaming, and I would say gamers as a general is also just like a very different demographic when it comes to what they like and how like their litmus test of sniffing out the bullshit, if you will. I feel like
Well, honestly, I feel marketing to gamers is probably extremely easy.
yeah, okay, I would love to hear more about that. Why talk to me more about that?
It's just about making stuff seem, like, cool. Like, I think the issue I find with developers when they're marketing is they do, like, mental gymnastics about what it takes to market, and by the time and they're I find the 2, like, regiment in what they wanna do versus just building, like, something like a cool brand. We're working with this one game now, and they have, like, all this awesome concept art, right? And they're like, "Oh, we don't wanna use it because it's not part of the game." And I'm like, "No, here's what you do. You say, 'Here is some concept art that did not make the game, wanting to get your thoughts on it.'" And people like that kind of stuff, but they're so busy just focused on this one set vision, they don't realize that they're building a brand, and a brand doesn't have to be, just this one sort of message. It can be stuff that just people just love to engage with. So I find doing that is really easy, in that when games open up their content and what they're open to the posting, it's a whole different ball game when it comes to marketing for them.
I love that, and I also feel like it's a great opportunity for them to be like, "Hey, like, this is what we cut. Imagine how cool the art is of what's actually in the game." You know what I mean? Like, if you like the concept art, you'll love the actual, like, in-game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, and that's also part of what I call like early market validation too. If you can get people excited about the concept of your game, that means that when you go to sell it, you understand how to, like, hit your audience and, like, what to pitch and how to position it. If you can't get them excited about a concept, you might wanna take a moment and pause to ask yourself, "Am I building something that's first marketable, or am I building something that's hitting the right audience?" I think a great, example of that I could use is, Deadpool. Before the first Deadpool came out, what they did is they did a pure, like, concept trailer of him, like, jumping into the car and fighting these bad guys and things like that, and they posted it online in the concept trailer, and this is, like, low fidelity too. This is, like, obviously, like, CGI and everything, and people just loved the idea of it, and from that, that movie got greenlit from the feedback and anticipation just on that concept trailer. So that's a game that can do the same exact thing, is that if people love your concept, what you're working on, work on it some more. If they don't, you might want to take time and actually step back and figure out, like, what can be improved about the concept positioning or audience that you might need to tweak.
I love that. I love that a lot. Um, Very cool, man. And so I'm guessing, is your background more on the marketing side, or is it the development side, or is it kind of like, start as dev and just naturally learn marketing, or what does that look like?
So this is my, like, what, 4th or 5th startup at this point. So I've done
Yeah.
a few things. My first cool thing I did was actually became usable with something called Sprout Connections back in 2006, and it's like an Eventbrite meets LinkedIn. I grew to around like 5,000 users month-over-month growth to around maybe 100,000, all like in the New York area. Then I had a few other ones that was like, untapped founders for founders of color, and I grew that across the nation in about 6 months after getting some, funding from one of, YC partners from it. But doing all these different companies has made me be like a salesperson, has maybe gone into marketing, but also development as well. So I've become a really good generalist at these kind of things. So because of that, it's just an extension what I've already been doing the entire time for different companies along my career path.
All right, Devin. So we are 90 days from launch, and we realize that, look, I've done all my hard work. We've coded everything. We've stayed up late. We've kind of grinded and built this game. And then you're just like, oh, shoot, I have not marketed this game and I have not told anyone about it. So that is what we are going to be covering today. The influence of this episode actually came from one of Devin's amazing blog post articles. It will be linked in the episode description. So please go check out this article and also all the other ones that he has. But again, I wanted to for us just to chat through, what do we do when this happens? Because I'm sure that it actually, you probably see it much more than I think ideally we would like to see. But a last minute marketing plan is not something that is totally not out of the blue. It's not something that we shouldn't expect to see kind of in this world of indie game creation. So to kick things off and just to start with you, what is the first thing that you would recommend, or the first thing that we would want to be doing as an indie dev when it's like, okay, I got 3 months, 4 months to be doing. Where am I starting?
I mean, the first thing that I would ask for a dev is, are there any pressures for you to actually launch right away, or can you wait? If there's no investor breathing down your back to get it launched, or you're not running out of money, where you're not going to launch 3 months and you're going to die, and everyone's going to be out of business, things like that. If there's no real pressing need, then just wait. Start building a marketing plan properly, and maybe push it back maybe to 6 months, if you can. So that's the first thing I would do, is assess that. Then I would look at, okay, so 3 months is the day where you're gonna do or die for your game. So the first thing that you really want to do is start to set up all your marketing assets that you need. So things like socials, things like your web page, Steam landing page. Make sure everything is set up. It clearly lays out what your game is, how what the gameplay is. You have good trailers, good imagery, and other things like that. And then you need to start to actually test the market and find your audience. So with testing the market, there's really two good ways of doing this. You can do like it for free on social, or you can do it paid for on like advertising. Um, so for like free social stuff, that's when you start, creating content about your game. So a bunch of like social media posts about your game development, things about your game, gameplay trailers, gameplay clips, artwork, that's all should go on social. And you want to start like testing out different hashtags, different messaging, and making sure that people are getting that your game is out there. I also recommend tracking everything. So tracking, just how many people engage with your post, how many people come to your website, how many people actually hit your Steam page. You want to be very, very data driven in this because that's going to let you know what's working or not. And then there is the paid UA side. This is when basically you want to get your best content, your best artwork, your best videos out there, and just start running A/B test on social media, on sorry, different advertising platforms. I think a mistake that games make is they only use Reddit as their advertising platform, or at least for indies. A lot of indies only focus on Reddit. You really want to have a broad spectrum of also looking at like TikTok, Facebook, that does Facebook and Instagram, and just seeing what actual platform best fits with your game and what you put out. Um, and also testing out which kind of content works best. Normally, I actually find that on Reddit, for example, like images convert better than actual videos do. But that could, depend upon the audience you're going after. But that's you want to test all this out as well. So both of those are at the beginning stages to actually trying to understand like who your audience is. Then once you're able to, well, sorry, the goal from that is to create repeat success. So if you do one post on social and it does 1,000 or 2,000 views, that drives maybe like 10 wish lists, do it again and then try to do it again. Once you get to the point where you can do this with a probably like 80% accuracy, that's when you want to double down on that strategy and really start to grow it. Same for on the paid UA side. If you can find the ad that converts best to whatever your bottom line KPI is, then you just pour more money into that ad. So that's where you want to start. Is just finding out who your audience is and then creating a repeat strategy to actually reach that audience.
Perfect. So I feel like that was awesome, and there's lots for us to kind of peel away and kind of dig a little bit deeper on. So let's pull it back. I know you had mentioned a bunch of the platforms, right? There's obviously TikTok, LinkedIn, Reddit, kind of all the different ones, but each one of these platforms has their own, let's say, world. Like Reddit likes pictures, where Instagram likes hashtags, and TikTok you don't need any of that. They want flashy, kind of quick hitting stuff, right? So with us having only 3 months to kind of get things out of here, is the goal for us to maybe pick one or two platforms, or are we trying to go as wide as we can to just see, all right, where is my content working?
So this can go both ways, to be honest. Um, it could you can pick like one or two platforms and just dump content into there. I don't know, but today there are so many tools that can actually make it easy to post on all platforms at the same time. It's like, why not just try all the platforms? I mean, that's one of the things that we specialize in is getting out to every single platform at the same time. But yeah, if you can do all platforms, just see what actually works best. And you would actually might be surprised because people might think TikTok is flashy all the time, but it's not. I mean, for example, on TikTok, you find like health videos. So someone can do like, "Hey, this is the top health tip for the day that I'm giving out," and some people like that kind of stuff, and they gain like a massive following off it. So that's why you don't want to go into stereotypes, what a platform should and shouldn't be. You want to see what resonates for your audience the best. And then once you figure out what those platforms are, then you can start to double down on them. Like for example, for certain games, like we tested out, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky, and everything, and we found that Blue Sky and Twitter actually worked way better than YouTube did in TikTok. So we only focused on that at the end. So yeah, I would come in wide and then narrow down once you start creating that repeat success.
Perfect. That's great. And then from a tracking perspective, so obviously I would say UTMs is probably the best way to be doing that. Is there either particular tools or different ways that you would recommend people tracking and maybe go and talk a little bit more about the importance of it? And again, I know glitch is probably top of that list, but
Yeah, I mean, yes. So we do have like a spectrum of ways to track from fingerprinting to UTMs to cookies. It really so I guess the first thing to think about is when tracking your users, make sure that you're following whatever privacy guidelines are there. Don't just track people and invade their privacy, especially when explicitly have said not to display invade your privacy. That's the first thing. But so the first is obviously UTMs that a lot of people use for tracking. They come into issues when you have to go like I don't know, like they can be spoofed. They're not always recorded if it goes to another tracking URL. So UTMs can be here and there. Then you can do cookies. So if you own the property, like your website as an example, you can start the cookie the user and track them to see how they're flowing through your website. Do you have your own wikis or things like that? Again, you can always cookie them as they go through your properties. And actually, that's a good reason why, as a developer, you should have your properties that you actually own and have full control over of, because you can use that as a touch point of engaging users, but also understanding who those users are. And then the other way of tracking is like fingerprinting. Um, if you're not familiar with fingerprinting, basically the easy way to explain it is that you record someone's device in a sense of like the screen size, the IP, OS, things like that, and you can make a guess on who that user is and how they're tracking it between different systems. With fingerprinting, you can, if it's done right, you can actually measure them from when they go to your website to when they actually install your game and be like, oh, that's the same user that website game. And that even can work on solutions like Steam as well. So with yeah, so once you employ like all the methods of tracking, then you can have a clear understanding of how your users are actually flowing through all your properties.
Mhm. And again, I think just what you kind of touched on before of, you start wide, you see what's working, but having the actual clear pathway of saying like this tweet, like I can tell with as much certainty as I possibly can that like this tweet led to this wish list, right? And then from there you're able to kind of build and repeat and learn and grow from it.
I mean, yeah, that's taking the data-driven approach we love to take. Like, so we have this client, and I remember when we first started working with them, they're like, it was 2 weeks in, and they're like, "Oh, we don't like to use like hashtags on our content." But then I pulled up a sheet, and I'm like, "Can you tell me which ones perform better? These ones didn't have hashtags and these ones did have hashtags." They looked at it, and the ones that had hashtags performed like 3 times better than the ones that didn't. When you have that kind of data, it's no longer about how I feel about something. It's about, okay, this is producing the results that I want, so I'm gonna go further down this path.
Now, when it does come time for us, okay, we made all of these brand new social media accounts. we can't just go and start posting 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day per account, right? Like, what can we walk through, let's call it warming up the socials a little bit and kind of the importance or maybe how long does that take? What does that look like and why do we need to do it?
Yeah, I mean, so one, you definitely want to start posting, maybe like once or twice a day. But then you also want to, as far as warming up, is following other people that are relevant to you, and start commenting on their stuff as well. That way, you don't get flagged as like a bot. Now, also typically during a new social account phase, a lot of the platforms have unwritten like probation time periods that you're in. Where it be like 14 days, 30 days, 60 days, where you might be considered a bot still until you have kind of proven yourself. So when you post, you might not get the traction you are expecting until you actually break out of that probationary period. What you also can do is do some paid UA on the account as well. So typically when starting out, maybe throw like 100, $200 on just advertising your account, saying, follow me here. This is a really cool platform, things like that, just to also get things started. So those are ways that you could all warm up your account.
Awesome. Have you seen any paid UA, whether it's Instagram works better than a TikTok, which works better than a Twitter? Is there one that you kind of recommend going to first from a paid perspective when it comes to
So
wish lists?
so the paid UA when starting out is not about wish list per se.
Okay.
It's more just about follower growth. So I think one thing has been understood about marketing is that it's not a one-to-one ratio. Doesn't mean that you're next thing going to put in like $1 in and get like $1 out. It's more of you might invest in this side, and at some point, it's going to grow large enough where it's going to return dividends on the other side. Like, say for an example, like you're starting out your social account and you put like $100 into advertising and you start growing those followers. None of those followers actually convert to wish lists for you. But then what happens as you start to post more content and they engage with that content, they share it with other people. And those other people see the content, get engaged, and then they might convert into wish list. So you have to think about this as more like, a long-term strategy to reach a larger audience than just trying to focus just on the bottom line metric.
Perfect. Okay. So it's like when we're starting, it's like, yes, wish list is what the end goal is, but that's not what my target is for right now, right? We're trying to see and get as many people into my ecosystem and then start feeding them, what am I building?
And this goes into one of the first mistakes I think developers make, I think, when marketing is they come on too strong with the CTAs. Like wish list, download. It's like imagine like you're trying to follow an influencer and they're like, buy this, buy this, buy this. You would not be like that engaged with them because it's too strong. It's too much of a call to action all the time. You wanna build that cool brand first as a game. So you wanna post stuff, people are like, oh, that looks interesting. And what they do is they find interesting, they'll actually start to research your brand more. So that's why I say to developers, put like a link tree in your social to something where that brings them easily back to the site because they'll see content and they will actually click the link and start doing research on the site. And I found that when people are engaged like that, they spend a lot more time inside the brand than they're being pitched to in a harder way. Like for an example, like one client we're working with, they started out with their Google Analytics, getting people to go back to the website, and we found that when it was a direct call to action, people stayed on the site maybe about 20, 30 seconds. When they came from the socials, when there was no direct CTA, so what we do is we have the link trees and the socials, and they get the final way back to the site. People that came back to the site stayed on there for like 2 or 3 minutes. just actually going through the site. So there you have to think about it. If someone's is interested in what you have posted online to actually take the time to look in your profile and dive in deeper, this is a highly qualified lead at that point that's going to show more engagement than someone that didn't take the same steps to actually learn about your brand or your game.
That's awesome. That's really, really like again, just having the metrics there, and it's not like, oh, it's a one time or two times X longer. Like we're talking five, six times like longer that they're staying onto this platform,
Hmm.
and then obviously consuming more and getting more invested.
Hmm. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and
And that's
I love the way that you put it. Again, I think in like a very easy way of thinking about it is even just going on a date with someone, right? Like you're not going on there and right away you're just like, hey, let's go back to my like you gotta go for a coffee first and chat and get to know
yeah,
one another, and you gotta course each other, and then from there you can let's figure out what wish listing looks like, right? So
yeah, yeah.
it's all about that. But okay, so this is great. We have our socials now set up. We kind of we know that we're bought in. We're going to be doing this, right? And even doing what you're talking about. Okay, this all sounds good. If I'm starting to build my brand, but I only got 30 days. So what does a lightweight marketing plan look like? Like what would be the best way of getting all of this information kind of put together, or having a bit of a like what strategy would we want to lay out is maybe the better way.
So you're saying you have how many days?
Oh, sorry, 90 days. I think I
Like,
said 30. So let's stick with the
30.
3 let's stick with the 3 months for now. We're still in this like strategic period.
All right. So typically, one, it should be a multi-prong approach where you don't just use one marketing channel, you have to use multiple. The question is, I like to work backwards and how long they actually take to set up and execute, and then what is the ROI they're actually going to have for your brand. So I think the big ones are like social influencers, paid acquisition, PR, and so let's start with influencers. So you have 3 months. And we're assuming your Steam page is set up. So influencers typically, so if you want, I say this, if you want good influencers, it takes about a month and a month and a half to go, to get them. So if you use a spray and pray site that this sends out a bunch of keys, typically, you're gonna get back low ROI on that, where people, they don't produce content or they don't produce any good content that actually converts. 100 views on a YouTube video from this guy who played your game is not, good ROI. What I like to do is really focus on influencers that have like a good between 10 to 100,000 followers, but more so that have a very good engagement rate. Typically around like 5 to 10% organic reach on average. By the way, so organic reach is the percent of people that are reached every time they post based upon their follower size. And then they have also a good engagement rate. And by engagement rate, I mean that if 1,000 people view it and 100 people like it or comment things like that, that's like a 10% engagement rate. So I look for like good metrics like that are consistent across all their posts. And then I like to, once I figured out who these people are, um, have them engage in more custom campaigns. So a campaign can be like, okay, so I want you to, so we're going to do a stream on this date. You're going to tweet about it twice beforehand, and then Instagram post about it once after, and you're going to stream for like 1 hour. And so that's an example of putting together a more comprehensive package where you're telling you guys are coming to an agreement of what's going to be put out. You also could do other short form content as well. Be like, hey, I want you to make a tutorial of this and post it on your YouTube channel. And here are all the key sites that you want to do. These custom campaigns take about a month or two to act set up. But the benefit of that is they have longer term ROI and greater impact for your game than just doing the spray or pray. So that's influencers. So that's the time frame. Okay. Then you have social media. Social media takes about, I say, about a month and a half to actually warm up and get going and define your voice and your cadence. Then after that, you can continue just posting on a regular interval to continue getting people engaged and getting them to actually wish list your game. With that in mind, um, as you close to your launch date, that's when you want to increase your cadence of content. So typically, for example, in the last month before a game's being launched, you want to produce like two pieces of content a day, which can be actually a lot of work to trying to do. So you have to be cognizant of, this is free and it gets high quality leads. But there's something else too. When people are telling before, like they're highly engaged, like 3 minutes on the site, things like that. We found that when you do it though that route too, and they wish list, we found that they have like a 30% conversion rate from wish list to actual sales. So, that's one benefit doing that, but it takes a lot of time doing that. Then you have paid UA. Paid UA, like advertising on Reddit, TikTok, and other sites, it's easy to get going and it's easy to scale. It's extremely costly to do so though. You got to be cognizant of I think the biggest thing to look at about paid UA. I tell developers is, does it make sense for the price of your game, that you are? So meaning that, if your game is only priced at like $10 and your cost per wish list is like like $2 that you're advertising on, and you have like a 10% conversion rate and like a 5% return rate, your game actually, I have this whole formula thing written down, but I know some of them is by heart. Your game has to be priced at least at $10.93 just to break even if that is your cost for advertising. So, it's the whole form of looking at, okay, if my game is priced at 20 or $30, then advertising actually makes sense for me to do. And then the last thing is PR. PR is a massive numbers game and also a relationship game. So, if you have people that that write about you, great, go after them. If you don't, build up a list of probably 500 publish journalists, writers, bloggers, things like that, and just kind of just mass email them, and try to get them to write about your game. The toughest part about doing PR is you have the least control on the output, because you know, people gonna get interested in your game, have some before, and they say, "Yes, we'll get it in our content schedule," and it comes out like a month and a half later. And you can't say, if it comes out sooner or not because they have their own priorities as well. So you gotta be cognizant of that. So that's looking at, like, I think the 4 major ways of how to bring your game to market, and you should probably try all of them to
Mhm,
be honest.
mhm. And for the first one, just want to confirm, Devin, for the influencers, would those be paid influencers, or are you talking more free, or like what does that look like
Both.
from both? Okay. Like,
Both.
is it common that you would be able to go to an influencer and be like, "Hey, can you do 2 posts, a tweet?" Like, you kinda making it, let's call it a package, or would that be what you're going in with,
So
like, a paid one with?
So, if you wanna do the package, you probably wanna do more of a paid influencer,
Mhm.
approach. It's also the size too. If they have, like, 5 to 10K followers, you could probably get it for free still, but if they
Okay.
have a good engagement rate and a good follower size, you're gonna have to pay a little bit. But again, if you're paying and it gives you great ROI, then it's more than worth actually paying for.
Okay, awesome. And okay, this might be a stupid question, but if you're building a deck builder, let's say, are you better off going to a smaller influencer who specializes in deck builder games, or a larger influencer who maybe specializes in indie games?
Um you you probably you do wanna stick with the smaller, more niched ones. Because we've came in the cases where, games have paid out a few thousand. I mean, not a few, I mean like 30, 40,000 influencers. And the influencer delivered on it to a wide audience. And by the time that um people downloaded the game and they actually did and people converted, the retention rate was about 1.5% on the game. So, if the audience is more honed, to, like, that niche, they're more likely to convert, and they're more likely to actually stay too.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then and for the pricing calculator, I just want to confirm, I know on the Glitch website you got is that like there's a really great kind of rate card calculator. Is that in a similar way or something that an indie dev can jump into to try and figure out, what's a good way of what my price should be kind of based off of that?
It depends what their goal is at the time, but I'm saying we're gonna assume this is wish list for a premium game, not a free-to-play game, because it changes slightly depending on, the game and the game's business model. But for a wish list, for wish list approach, you wanna look at what is your average cost per wish list? What do you estimate that, your conversion rate is going to be? And then what do you estimate that your actual install, returns are gonna be? And then plug those in, and then figure out, like, what your pricing for your game should actually be for it to be profitable. Um like, I just went over it with another client. I was saying, like, if you're gonna spend $10,000 on advertising, you're probably gonna make, based upon your current stats, $13,000. And you're gonna have a $3,000 profit here. So you have to figure out, is that worth it? Or do you wanna change some variables along the way, either increase the price of the game, try to lower your acquisition costs to actually, increase your margins.
Gotcha. And if I'm new to this, how do you have any kind of rules of thumbs or a good place to go to try and figure out what those some of those estimates are going to be? Like if I don't know what my estimated conversion rate is going to be. Like how would I kind of find some of that information?
That information is all over the place. Everyone has different stats on it. I mean, you can start by looking at your category to see what people normally convert at or people normally return at. I think for the returns too, a good indicator, is looking at your median playtime. So one thing I've noticed with games is that if their median playtime is like 10 minutes or less, and that's a strong indicator that you're probably gonna have a high amount of returns, and we've seen games have, like, 40% return rates. That means that your onboarding sucks, or if, I don't know, people weren't, engaged with it, so they need to actually fix that issue of whatever is causing people not to play, and I tell them that, your real benchmark is to get people to play for 2 hours. Because if they play for your game for 2 hours, they can't return it afterwards according to Steam's rules. So, that's their goal. And then as far as, like, the actual conversion rate, I think it's just looking at how people are engaged with your game outside of the brand. I think, looking at your socials is a good indicator of that. Or maybe even your Discord as well if it's very active. Let's say, we have a lot of people that come on, our socials. They're highly engaged. They like all our content. They're excited for when the game comes out. So I'm assuming that we're going to have a higher conversion rate. Or people. That's why I also like to do alpha testing. We find that doing alpha, a lot of people they're playing the game for a lot of long period of time. So I think we're going to have a high conversion rate when we actually launch. So you just want to look at like all those metrics as well. And I think understanding your game and how it's performing is better than trying to compare your game to someone else's game that's out there because two games can perform completely different. I'm sorry, the same game can perform completely different.
And I feel like most of the times people always take like the exception and not the rule. It's like, oh look, people love Balatro. Like my game is gonna blow up like
Yes,
that too, right?
yes.
And you're just like, no.
Well, that's the thing. So people look at Balatro, but they don't understand like Balatro had a whole marketing plan behind it. What that wasn't by accident. I mean, even to get into Pilatro, like, as a little side tour, like, one, I know the publisher reported to all, I think, 6 different platforms, when they launched. They launched 2 demos, 2 demos. They had a Steam demo, and then they had, like a different one, later. And I remember just reading about it. They had a bunch of different strategies that actually went into the marketing, they hosted tournaments too. They had tournaments that people came to online for Balatro. So, you know, you call Balatro an exception, but when you really dive into Balatro, it actually had a whole plan in place that they were executing a lot. So,
Pure masterclass then, right? It's like
yeah,
this is not an accidental fluke. Like this is a well-crafted strategy through and
yes.
through.
And that's the thing about good marketing is you don't even realize it's marketing.
Yeah. Yep.
It feels like, "Oh, they were just successful." I was like, "No."
Yeah, that's what they want you to think, but yeah,
Yeah.
1,000%. All right, my man. So we have our social set up. We are bought in. We got our UTMs. All that stuff is good to go, right? We started talking to influencers, and now it comes time for us to start launching 1 to 2 kind of posts a day. How are we starting to build out this content schedule or this content calendar, I should say, and what types of content are should we kind of be focusing on? Because I'm guessing we need to go back and even, start saving clips of our gameplay and figuring out how are we going to actually talk about this thing. So, what are we doing on this front here?
Okay, so I would pick, I think, 4 content types to start with. The first thing I wanna say that all content is fair game. Everything that you can get your hands on about your game or adjacent to your game is fair play. So, when we start with the team, for example, the first thing I like to do is when I get in is actually interview people on the team. So, get their thoughts about the game, why they're excited for the game, their favorite features, everything. And that actually becomes like in interview clips. So we've taken that, have a developer talking, yeah, I really like this. And we show like a small clip on it, and people love that kind of stuff. Then, if you have like old devlogs, that's content you can do. So I tell developers that when you're actually coding, like in things like Maya, turn on your screen and just start recording. Just record everything that you're doing, and then that becomes good content. You take that and you turn it down into like 1 minute clips, and you fast forward it, put a little music behind it, and people love to watch stuff being built. They're like, "Oh yeah, that seems really cool." I think a mistake that I see is when developers make these long form devlogs. I mean, so because those are great for other developers. And other developers will come in and they will give you kudos, and you feel like you're doing something, but those aren't your customers. Those aren't the people that are actually going to buy for you. So, if you're going to do devlog content, make it short, make it fun, make it exciting and cool. Then there's, your obvious gameplay content of people that's, showing off cool clips. Then you can do artwork. Um, and artwork is actually really interesting too, because that can become a whole different spectrum on how it's executed. For example, if you have like cool background scenery, what you could do is, on Twitter or one of the other sort of like short form content, social platform content is like put an inspiring message over the artwork for people and then post it online. People are like, oh yeah, that looks like a really cool background. The message is awesome. Things like that. Then, other artwork, like, you have, like, weapons and stuff like in your game, post the weapons online and then, like, put lore around it. Like, this is the sword of blah, blah, blah. It can, cut through anything on Earth, there's lots of different ways that you could use content. Right now, one of the games we're working with, they just had an, in-person event, and we're cutting up the content now, and we found this guy that he's so energetic, we're making a whole social segment on him. So there's a lot that you could do. All content is fair games. Just be super creative on how you use that content.
I love it. Even I love the lore one. Even when it comes to mind, is even just coming up with like a stupid thing like whatever Lore's Day, and it's like every Thursday you're gonna put a new
Mhm.
piece of lore out about a weapon or a character, whatever it kind of is, right? But
Yep.
it's a great way of giving people something to look forward to for the next week.
Mhm. Or, you can leverage things like Throwback Thursdays, show artwork that didn't make the game, or like old concepts that got thrown out, or yeah, you could leverage everything.
Awesome. And now from I know like again, I know Glitch has a tool, the social scheduler. But there's Hootsuite and a bunch of other kind of platforms that do something. How would you utilize a social scheduler as opposed to, logging in every day and kind of launching? Like what's some of the main benefits as opposed to obviously the key time saving ones?
As far as the social schedule, I mean, that's really the key thing. It's saving time, but with Glitch, what we focus on is an all-in-one platform that unifies all touch points together, and then connects how people are flowing through your game. Um, so I don't want to get too far into the product, but we have people use the ad system, we have people use the social, we have people actually fingerprint inside the game as well. And that all gets turned into one massive system of data that then becomes actionable of understanding how your game works. So think of it as like a HubSpot, but it's specifically designed for your gaming and has tools that HubSpot doesn't have for games. And to get to your question about the schedule, yeah, it's all about um, time. The biggest thing that developers face is time. Time to create content versus time to code. If I'm doing one thing, I'm not doing the other. um, so being able to automate that process is a huge benefit, but then also to be collecting data on everything as well to make decisions based upon data later is even a bigger benefit to the developers.
Nice. And would you recommend a developer taking, let's say, 1 day a week to schedule for 1 week ahead? Or would you recommend them taking, let's say, 2 days and creating a month worth of just like, all right, post one, post two, post three, and just get everything kind of out?
It's up to developer and then how their sprints work. So for me personally, I'm both a developer and a marketer, so I can talk from both sides of the table. I like to do things in 1 week sprints because I don't know how the next week is going to change and what ideas that I might learn from the previous week that I want to implement. So planning out an entire month, I for me, like, things change really quickly. And so I imagine the same does for developers as well. But what I would say is that whichever approach developers decide to do, they do it all in one go and don't break it up into every single day. And the reason why, and speaking from the developer standpoint here, it's all about context switching. So when you have to go from one task to another that's completely different, it's a completely different brainwave that you actually have to change. So, if you're creating content, just create content for that one day, 8 hours, or however long you do it. Don't do any development while you do so. That way, you can work more efficiently at it than trying to break up development and break up content creation as well.
I love it. Yeah. So again, pick a Sunday, pick a Monday, pick whatever day you want to do, and like, all right,
Mhm,
let's just strap in. Let's grab clips. Let's figure out what topics I want to kind of load up and queue up. So again, it's like lore Thursdays. We're gonna do
mhm,
before and after Wednesdays, and you know what I mean. Kind of just
yep,
set this up, schedule it out, and then you also don't have to think about it. It's something that
mhm,
you're then is like, all right, this is live, this is running, and now you can focus without feeling that like, oh shit, I haven't posted a tweet yet today,
yes,
right?
right.
Awesome. Okay, so now we have that set up. Things are launching. Social media is firing on all cylinders. How long are you waiting when something goes out to kind of analyze it and see, do I need to pivot this or keep it or what does that look like from a timing perspective?
I would give it about 2 weeks to a month or so, and posting multiple times of the same thing because, on socials, it can be a hit or miss. Meaning you can post the exact same thing, maybe even at different times of the day, or whoever sees it first. One post could go like semi-viral, and the other post could fall completely flat. So you need to do this like multiple times for an extended period to understand like on average what's working and then what's not working.
Sounds and so about a week or 2. And then and within that week or 2, are you doing things like A/B testing or is that like, "Let's run it for a week, then number next time, let's try something slightly different." Is that a fair way of running it?
Yeah, run it for a week, try something a little bit different. Run it for another week, try something a little different. Um, and yeah, so a good example of that was started working with one game, and we realized that um, the gameplay trailers weren't getting any real traction. People were not engaged with it. Then we started posting artwork. And the artwork started to actually get people to follow the account and get people to engage with the game and the game's website. And so what we realized is that the gameplay was not compelling. And so the game dev have had to go back and think about what aspects of their gameplay wasn't compelling, but the art or the artwork was. And it took about actually 3 to 4 weeks to really figure that out. Once we figured it out, we just start hitting more and more artwork. But they had a ton of it, but that's how long it took to get to that point.
Very cool, and then so when the game dev came back with kind of, let's say, the reworked actual game mechanics, did you start to see a pickup from, "Okay, now the trailers are doing, better than what they were before?" Is that how you're trying to validate it from that side?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, okay, so you made these changes or improvements, and people began to resonate with the game a lot more. So yeah, we started. They actually did go back. They sharpened up the graphics, made some transformation scenes a lot more vivid. They fixed their FPS issues. They made it look real choppy and like smoother gameplay, and all that had a positive impact to say, oh yeah, this actually looks like really cool now versus before looked like something I probably wouldn't play.
Yeah, very cool. And from a wish list kind of impression side, or maybe not wish list impressions, but like a conversion rate. Is there any good conversion rates or maybe like a rule of thumb that a dev should be looking for let's say for every 1,000 likes, it ideally should equal X wish lists?
Yeah, so typically I like to do like 2%. So you post like 1,000, get 1,000 views, 2% of that should actually convert to wish list. But it's also a little bit more complicated too, because you want to look at like if you get 1,000 views and no one's excuse me, if you get 1,000 views and no one's liking your content, um, you're probably gonna have a lower conversion rate. But if you get 1,000 views and you get like 10% hearts that are liking it, chances are you probably get like a 4 or 5%. So you have to look at not only the awareness that you're having, but also the engagement on the content as well to understand like, okay, this is what converts. And it's hard to give a hard number on that too, on what conversion should be, because it honestly differs per game, how people get there. Um, like, an example was this, so we were working on this, one game, and they got like a ton of good socials engagement, but the wish list weight was really low. And then we looked, checked out their Steam page, and we found everyone, just dropped off on the Steam page. You dive in deeper, and the trailer looked blurry, and it wasn't convincing on the Steam page to actually get someone to actually wish list. So, there can be you have to look at the entire user's journey and what they're getting at each point to figure out like what something actually should be.
Yeah, and that's it's a great way of thinking and even visualizing it too, right? The funnel, right? It's like, okay, cool, we're moving from here to here to here. But if you could tell that, hey, once they get to here, if people are dropping off, now you know exactly like I'm gonna go and focus some time and effort on patching some holes here and try and
Mhm.
get everyone down to the bottom, right?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly the one to look at it. Yeah, as a funnel and how people navigate through the funnel and where issues are in your funnel.
Mhm. Get the duct tape out, my friend. Get the duct tape out. Lastly, in this section, what's the biggest mistake or some mistakes that you see developers making when trying to interpret data? And especially, in this last minute, like I got 60 days, 90 days, 30 days to try and get this done. What do you see any kind of things that they're doing that might not be on a positive perspective?
Okay, so the first thing is looking at averages, I would say, especially around like I think the best example of this is the average play time. So let's say that's why I say average versus medium. So let's say you had a play time, and you know what a histogram is, right? So you have like a lot of people here, and it goes down smaller, and then suddenly you have this, one chart or like on the side that's huge on the left side. That's saying someone played like a game 10 hours. Well, that when you're dealing with averages, um, that 10 hours is going to disrupt everything else in the chart, and you're going to misread it. Say, oh, my average play time is 1 hour, and it's like no. 95% of your audience plays 10 minutes.
Yeah. Or
And you
just
have that
one dude played
mm,
10 hours, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, it's always like, don't look at averages. Look at how people are look at the whole data set and understand what's happening. So I think that's the biggest mistake I see when developers are using data is the average and not knowing how to interpret that.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so we've now made it to 10 days prior, right? Launch is coming up. Is there anything that you would recommend in these kind of last few days to just like, all right, let's mobilize this army, let's get these people working, and let's try and get as much in as we possibly can right at the end?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it it depends on the game and what you've been doing and what resonates with people. Um, for example, I find you could like for example on Reddit do a Steam key giveaway, where, you have to sort of, what do you we did this for another game. We only have 3 keys available, and everyone had to say the name of the game in the post to enter the raffle. And, that saw, like, a huge spike in wishes because the readers people were after, the Steam key, and they're willing to participate for that, for free access to the game. Um you could have, I don't know, like, one thing that we did with another game is, 10 days out, we actually started to live stream the game on Twitter, and people could tune in and actually watch the game being played by the developer, on Twitter as he went through some of the stuff. So there's a lot that you can do. You really just have to come back and like analyze your audience, what resonates with them, and then just triple down on stuff like that during the last days. Constantly making as much noise as possible. to raise your awareness and get out that you're launching.
And for the first example that you gave there, the wishlist key giveaway, was the main goal of that promotional tactic to try and just get as many wish lists as you can to and try to better your chance of getting on the new and noteworthy? Because I would say, and like we've talked about earlier in this episode, like not every wish list is weighted the same, right? If you have someone who's spending time on your website, who's bought into your brand, like that is a much more worthwhile wish list than someone who tried to enter a contest. So I'm guessing you probably wouldn't see too much of a conversion rate from those people on Reddit, but you would probably see a pretty nice spike from a wish list perspective that maybe would get Steam interested in your game. Is that a fair kind of assumption for that type of play?
I don't so that's a hard question to answer because even though Steam did come out and say the wish lists are weighted, they don't say exactly how it's weighted. Um, so there's still discrepancies around that. But I would say that still every wish list you can get counts. It's sort of like the saying, um, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So it's like, even if it's good or bad quality, just try to get it. Don't worry about the quality so much. Just try to get as many as you
Yeah. Shots on net then, right? It's just we're just trying to
can.
get shots on net.
hmm
Awesome. So we've done it, Devin. We done it. We broke through this 90-day sprint. We have the game launched. What are we recommending a dev do after this 90 days? Are we keeping on track with just the same launch schedule? Are we telling them, go take a break for a week and then come
No,
back? Like what are we doing
do
next?
not take a break. So keep marketing. So typically your first week sales, um, okay, so we've seen, for example, first week sales of something that you work with been like 100, 200,000. And then the first month sales are like 500,000. So it means that people are still buying your game even after it comes out. So you don't stop marketing, you keep marketing. You keep trying to do things like getting streamers on board, getting creating what do you call it, engagement on social media. It might shift to creating UGC at this point, so people are playing your game now. Can you come up with something fun and exciting that says, "Hey, if you create this UGC, um, what we're going to reward you." Like this for this one game, they have a Patreon too, where they have like free giveaways. Well, not free, but they have content on their Patreon as well. I've actually this gives a whole other segment where like games are now getting into transmedia, where they're doing things like comic books out there, and people actually like the whole stories or light novels they can have like around the universe of the game. Let's call it. So, we did this thing where, for the first month, if you create this kind of picture, we're gonna give you free access, to the newest stuff coming up on our Patreon page that's about the game. People started create content for that. So yeah, you always wanna be thinking about even though it's launched, what can I do today to increase more sales? And, games, just because you launched, like there's a whole sales like decline. It's not like you launch, week or month one, sales fall off. No. Games continue to earn money or make sales over the course of the whole entire first year. So for example, if your month one sales are like 200,000, you can predict that you might make between 5 and 6 over the course of the entire year of that game. But people will still buy the game. So you always want to, keep doing marketing because there's always a chance that you're going to make more sales that are coming
Yeah,
in.
and like I've spoken about it many times. I'm a huge fan of email newsletters, collecting emails to be able to use that. And I think even just as you continue marketing from your first game, that also helps to just parlay into your next efforts? And what does that look like from, now more of a studio perspective as opposed to just your one and done?
Oh, yeah, that's the one thing, like, if this is your 2nd or 3rd game and even building your audience, you have a huge advantage over games that are their first time out. And this has nothing to do with the quality of the game, nothing in the quality at all. This is just about you have people that are used to the game that you have made, and they know your brand name. So you have a huge advantage if it's the 2nd or 3rd game.
Absolutely, and then also when you launch a second game or a third game, you can bundle it with your first game, and
Oh yeah.
maybe a new person who's never played your first one, they're just, "Oh, okay, I'll spend whatever, $2, $3, $5 more and just get
Yes.
all both games or 3 games."
Mhm.
And now you have even more, like,
Mhm.
people bought into your pool, so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a whole other I feel like that's a whole other side tangent that
Yes.
we can we can go on. We'll save that for another day, my friend.
Yeah.
Um Alright, so this has been awesome, Devin. I do wanna give some time for you to, plug and pitch and talk a little bit more about Glitch. I did not mean for that to rhyme, but I'm very happy it did. Uh, again, I think you have a wonderful platform. You have a fantastic blog, and we've kinda touched upon it a little bit throughout the episode, but I do wanna
Mhm.
give you a little bit of time to kinda talk through what are you building and how it can help our audience.
Yeah, so I'm building an all-in-one marketing platform that's designed to make marketing a lot easier and faster, especially right now because marketing has become essential for games. Um, you know, so back, the reason part wanted to start it, back in around like 2015 or so, like only 2,000 games came out a year, and pretty much the failure rate was only maybe like 5%. Most games made a good chunk of money. As marketing becomes so saturated, build it and they become kind of end it. And, the failure rate of games making under $500 or under $2,000 went from like 5% to like 80% now. And so a lot of that has to come to do with marketing, where the concept of market build it and they become no longer exists. And this is in every industry, by the way. It's been in books. This has been in movies, music, where we hit that saturation point. There has to be a change in the GTM, and so Glitch is designed to actually be that change, to give developers a structured approach of how to do this, but also tie in the assets to different platforms, and into one. So instead of, doing advertising on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and have to go through like 3 different dashboards to figure out everything, it's all in one. Same for influencers, same for social. That way, you're not trying to manage all these different apps, and it's easier on developers' time and how they spend marketing and how they're able to consolidate their marketing efforts versus being just overwhelmed by everything they have to do on all these different platforms. So that's what we're doing at Glitch. One unified marketing solution for gaming.
Wicked. And if the people are looking to connect with you or find you, where's the best place that they can go for that?
This probably LinkedIn, Devin Dixon, Glitch, as one.
Amazing, and I'll throw all of your contact details in the show notes once again. So for anyone watching, listening, just head over there. You'll find everything for Glitch and for Devin as well. Amazing, my friend. So before I let you out, one thing that we do here on Freaking Cool Indies with all of our guests is we ask them to highlight and shout from the rooftop one of their favorite either indie games, indie devs, or indie studios. Because we do, or I do, really think it's important for us to give everyone their flowers when it's deserved and give people a chance to give some of
Yeah,
the other
yeah,
amazing creators a shout out.
yeah. I think, yeah, I would say I don't know. Like most things work is so we really get into them. So I don't want someone to feel left out. That I'm not shouting them out. um, I would say. So right now, I would say it's got to be Popularium. So we're working with Richard Garfield's newest game. I don't know if you know Richard Garfield. He created Magic of the Gathering. So he's working on a game called Popularium, and right now I just love working with their team. They're so innovative and fun, just to be around and cool to be with. So yeah, Popularium.
That's awesome. And yes, I am. Which way is it here? That's a nice Magic the Gathering set, and all behind it, I got all my cards. So I am. I'm on board with whatever that man is currently creating. Amazing. Well, Devin, once again, thank you so much for jumping on and spending your time and kind of walking us through this last minute, 90-minute playbook. It is official, my friend. You are a freaking cool indie. And with that, I want to say thank you for that. And again, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And
Thank
to
you.
all of our listeners out there.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. I enjoyed, the questions and sharing my knowledge and speaking with you. So,
Amazing. I appreciate it greatly. More than I can tell you. So thank you
all right.
very much, guys. And again, have a great rest of your day, everybody.